It's your body. You rock it, empower it, and you take care of it. CSU Health Network is here to answer your questions. Welcome to the CSU Health Chat. CSU Health Chat is a program paid for by the CSU Health Network. All content is controlled by the CSU Health Network.
Hello and welcome to Health Chat, brought to you by the CSU Health Network. I'm your host, Lena Hallian, and today I'm joined by Cody Farrar, a certified peer educator with Cruise, and Gwen Sieving from the CSU Health Network. Today we are going to talk about a type of tobacco that seems to be growing in popularity among college students, shisha. It seems like people talk a lot about tobacco, so why are they talking about it more today?
Well, the reason we're talking about tobacco here today is because it's the #1 preventable cause of death in the United States today.
Tobacco also can be, if we look at the age range, 18 to 24-year-olds, it is the only age group that continues to rise in terms of tobacco use, so that's why it's really important for us to talk about tobacco in general on a college campus, and hookah can often be a gateway to a more regular usage of cigarettes or chew and dip or something like that.
Okay. Well, it definitely sounds like this is an important topic. Before we start talking more about health issues surrounding shisha, can you explain what shisha and hookahs are?
So shisha often is used instead of the word tobacco. It's usually what people say they smoke with the hookah. It's the tobacco itself, shisha is. Sometimes people actually say the hookah is, they can refer to it as the shisha itself. But it actually has, the hookah has several parts. The base down here is where people will put liquids, and that helps with cooling effects, which we'll talk about later. This is just simply the body, which hooks the base to the bowl, and the bowl is actually where the tobacco is placed, or the shisha is placed in the bowl, and then it is heated with usually charcoal over the top. This is to catch any kind of ashes that come down. This is the hose that we'll talk about later that often can have some particles left in it. And then this is the mouthpiece. We don't actually have the mouthpiece, but this is where people actually will intake then the tobacco and the smoke.
Okay. We caught up with some students on campus to hear what they think about shisha. Let's take a look.
I don't really know that much about it, but the idea that it pulls some of the carcinogens and some of the heavier tar out of the smoke.
I'm not gonna lie, I've heard that hookah it's cleaner to be smoking because it's filtered through water, I guess.
Hookah is more of a cultural trend among this generation, like the younger generation.
Anytime you're inhaling smoke in your body, it's a terrible idea, you know, whether you're running out of a burning building that's on fire or you're lighting some plant on fire. I think bottom line, you know, common sense leads you to believe it's unhealthy for you.
There are certainly a lot of opinions here. One of the most common ideas was that shisha is safer than cigarettes because the water filters it. We also talked to a professor on campus to find out what he thought of the myth that water filters shisha. Here's what he had to say.
Many of those chemicals will not be filtered by the water at all. A small degree of the particles will, but I would suggest maybe 10%. And only things that are really soluble in water. In other words, that they have a similar chemical nature as water. If they're polar, which is a term that basically means water-loving, then some of those chemicals will deposit in the water. And of course you see that if you look at a column of water that's had smoke pulled through it, it will tend to gray over time. But by and large, it's only filtering a very small percentage of the compounds that are pulled through it.
So if water doesn't filter the shisha very much, are there any benefits to using water in the base?
Really, the only thing the water does is cools the whole unit. And even sometimes people will use Kool-Aid or juice or a variety of different things in the base. So, and those don't filter. If water doesn't, those aren't going to. And so it's really used to cool down so you're not sucking in burning hot air.
Very true. All right. Well, we also heard that shisha can be a cultural experience. Do you agree?
Sure, using hookah can be a cultural experience, but I would challenge any person, students included. There's lots of ways to get cultural experiences without putting yourself at any kind of a risk. So I guess I would maybe encourage people to seek out some of those first, and think about, any behavior or activity that you do, what kind of risks are involved.
All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
One of the other myths that came up was that shisha is more natural or cleaner than cigarette tobacco. What do you two think about that?
Well, so the word natural oftentimes is equated with healthy or healthier, and that's not always the case. Say, for instance, dog poo is natural, but most people probably wouldn't want to smoke it or have really anything to do with it other than put it in the garbage can. So you have to be very careful with the marketing around any kind of natural product. And so just because it is from a natural source doesn't necessarily mean it's safer or healthier.
Very true. All right. Are there any additional risks when sharing hookah hoses with friends compared to smoking alone?
There's a lot of risks, especially when going to a hookah bar, because you don't know how they clean their hookahs and the hoses, because a lot of people are using those hoses, then you come in and use it after them. So one way, you could buy your own and clean it really well, or when you do go to the hookah bar, make sure you don't share the little mouthpiece that goes right there with your friends. They give you individual ones, and if you keep putting yours on, it'll help. I mean, you could get meningitis, any type of cold. Herpes has been known to be passed by hookahs, so it's pretty dangerous.
Anytime you have the potential to share saliva or cross-contamination with saliva, it could be anything, like Cody said, from a simple cold to something a little bit more serious. So you have to think about, there is always that potential of getting someone else's saliva, if it's not completely thoroughly cleaned after every use, into your own body. And so it's something just to pay attention to.
Definitely, it could get serious.
Yeah.
Overall, many students seem to think that shisha is safer than cigarette tobacco, but it sounds like that's just not true. There seems to be a lot of misinformation out there. So where's a good place to get good information?
Well, most of our information when we're sharing in our classes or programs that we do, all of our information mainly comes from the World Health Organization, which is a highly reputable, obviously credible organization for any kind of health information. And what I always tell folks, students specifically, you want to really check the motivation behind the information source. Sometimes if it's a .com resource,